Tony West is joining me right now from Americans for Prosperity, Georgia. And Tony, welcome back to the program. It's great to have you here.
Hey, Martha. Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Good morning. Before we get into the meat of this, we got a question just before the break about the school choice bill. And I just want to, the concern that the caller had is that, where's the funding going to come from? How can we be sure that the funding doesn't end up encumbering local school systems? And, how will the process of implementing it go? And what I said is that, as I understood it, that the money would be separate, that would follow the student. It wouldn't be part of the regular money that the local school system gets. But that, again, it's in committee and there are things being done and things could change. So just give folks an overview of the school choice bill as it stands right now.
Yeah, those are good questions. The bill last year, of course, failed on the House floor, so there's everything's on the table in trying to earn a majority of votes to make sure it passes. In terms of the funding, that's a lot of where questions end up arising because it's still fairly a new concept, even though I think we're well over a dozen states now have something like this. We want the money to be parent-directed, even if the parents don't have direct access to it, if that makes sense. So that's
Yes.
A lot of concerns around accountability. Do we know what the money is actually being used for? Well, the answer is yes. The bill would illustrate exactly what are eligible expenses, and there would be a board set up to audit these expenditures to make sure that they're being spent on actual education-related expenses. On the flip side, in terms of how local public schools would be impacted, it would be the same impact when a student moves. If you move from Atlanta to Savannah, the school is impacted because that child is leaving the district and they would no longer be receiving those state funds. The point of legislation like this is to make sure that education dollars are actually following the student.
Yep.
Because we fund education to educate children. We don't fund education to invest in a building. So that's really the genesis of ideas like this. And, when people actually take advantage of this, other states have seen, the public schools aren't harmed. No one wants public schools to be harmed, whether they be proponents or opponents of this type of legislation. So I know that advocates and lawmakers that are supporting this bill are doing their due diligence and making sure that whatever the final bill looks like, that no one is harmed and only helped from legislation like this.
Well, and honestly, I think where we are right now, where we have charter school systems and we have charter schools and we do have we have the beginnings of school choice in what we have right now, and we're seeing that our public schools are not being harmed. So it's going to be very exciting. I have school board meetings this week. I'm sure we're going to be talking about that, and it's going to be exciting. But I just wanted to get an update on that because we do spend over half the money that we spend in our state on education, and it always creates a lot of interest, doesn't it? Because we do.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's get back to kind of the things you guys are working on, and I appreciate that update because I think it's important. Senate Bill 233, give people just an overview of what it is and what you all are expecting related to that.
Yeah, Senate Bill 366 is the Tax Expenditure Transparency Act. It was introduced as a result of a joint study committee between the House and Senate looking at the amount of tax credits and tax exemptions the state gives out annually, oftentimes to niche special interests. And the concern is when we're either not collecting taxes that should be collected or we're giving tax credits to certain individuals or entities, that's money that could be used elsewhere in the state, whether on more legitimate government functions like education, like we just talked about, or healthcare or transportation, or in looking at tax relief, giving money back to Georgians. So this bill's set up to try and make sure that lawmakers have a full, transparent picture of all the money that's going out the door in these tax expenditures. And we think it's a good first step. It's not prescriptive. It's not saying one credit has to go and another gets to stay. It's just making sure that lawmakers know what's actually going on. And I think it's a step to get to our ultimate goal, which is a fair, simple tax code that supports an economy of broad-based prosperity.
And that was Senate Bill 366. So tell us a little bit about
Mm-hmm.
Senate Bill 233 and what it is and when we anticipate another vote.
Oh, yeah. So Senate Bill 233 is from last year, so it's still live. No action has been taken on it yet because it's already passed its originating chamber. It already passed the Senate. It's in its House committee. So lawmakers are going to try and work on the bills that need to get out of their original committee before crossover day, which is February 29th. So I'm anticipating action to be taken on 233 after crossover day, which will be in March, and before sine die, which is March 28th. So hopefully soon after crossover day, we start seeing action taken on it in the House committee and hopefully on the House floor as well.
So what is Senate Bill 233?
That's the Georgia Promise Scholarship. That's the main education choice bill being considered by the Georgia legislature this year. It's allowing the Georgia portion.
That's good.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not good at associating the numbers with the bills. So I know you guys live in the world of talking in numbers, but I just wanted to make sure I understood what that was. So that is actually the school choice bill, Senate Bill 233.
That's right, yeah.
Okay. And so was the changing, obviously we had the terrible death of Richard Smith and the new rules chairman appointed. Did that slow things down at all on the House side?
I think it did. I think there may have been a little bit of a slowdown those couple of days, but I think they're still on track. And the way, Martha, as you know, a lot of work doesn't get done in the first few weeks anyway. It's a thing that people wait to the last minute to kind of make decisions and decide on things. So I still think there's plenty of time for many bills to pass both chambers before the crossover day cutoff.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be a good time to do that too. How does this session feel compared to other sessions? Because we're kind of awash with money. It's more of a policy session than a money session. I'm not hearing much discussion about Medicaid expansion, which we did at the beginning of the session, and CON. I'm not hearing as much about that. What are your thoughts on that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I felt the same way. I'm a little bit surprised, but in terms of Medicaid expansion, I've made a point to speak with lawmakers at the Capitol over the last few weeks to gauge their support, and there's been a lot of kind of shoulder shrugging, saying I haven't heard much about it. I know a little bit about it, and a lot of folks also saying I'm not really interested in pursuing this. I mean, this would be a pretty big break from the last 10 or 12 years in Georgia of resisting any type of Medicaid expansion. So it'd be a little bit like turning the Titanic. It probably would take a little bit of time, but there's still, like I said, another 10 days or so before crossover day. And even after crossover day, strange things can happen. So there still may be some action on Medicaid and certificate of need, but we'll just have to wait and see.
So last year, and if you don't know anything about this, I was just thinking about it as it related to Medicaid. Last year they expanded, or it might have been the year before last, they expanded Medicaid coverage for pregnant women. And this has been a part of some of the kind of incremental stuff that's been done. But we continue to have these mortality rate reports that are a challenge. Are you hearing anything about that part of it? Was it successful or not, or has it been quiet?
Specifically on that, it's been pretty quiet. It sure seemed like across the board, folks viewed that as a success or a good policy. But I do think that that specific instance highlights why, individuals or organizations like AFP oppose Medicaid expansion in whatever form it may take, because what other states have seen is that when they do expand Medicaid to able-bodied, childless adults, it crowds out the people that are truly in need, whether it be they don't have access to the services they want because other people are now accessing those Medicaid doctors, or actual health insurance and other prices are rising because of that change in Medicaid coverage. So yeah, if those are the concerns that truly needy, we need to make sure they're actually receiving the care they need before expanding Medicaid to able-bodied childless adults.
Well, and one other thing to kind of put in your quiver for next year, I don't think we'll get to it this year, but there continues to be really high cost for small businesses as it relates to health insurance. And I know we've rolled out several programs that are supposed to help with that, and they really haven't had enough time to actually, initially the signups were slow, and now it looks like it's getting to be more. But I think for next year, that's something that I keep hearing from small business owners as being just a huge cost for them, because a lot of the people that would typically provide insurance in those smaller settings, they just don't want to play anymore, or they make it so expensive that you can't play.
Mm-hmm. Well, in terms of next year and beyond, what I would love to see Georgia look at is actual free market solutions, not going back to the 70-year-old Medicaid program and trying to do the same thing we've always done and wonder why healthcare prices continue to rise. Yes. When we're getting government involved. Government causes the prices of things to rise. If we could go back to the drawing board, get creative,
yep,
and new innovative type of solutions, I think that's what I would love to see, and we'll just have to keep pushing that ball forward.
No, I think it's absolutely true. That if you have a system that works better, and it really did. My husband was a solo practicing primary care physician until he closed his office 5 years ago. He was really a dinosaur, okay? But what we saw happen during the course of his time practicing is it used to be that Medicare, not Medicaid, but Medicare was a portion of what you got paid in private insurance. So private insurance generally paid more than Medicare did. What happened over the last 30 years is now Medicare is kind of the best you can get, and your private pay is less in a lot of cases. And so it's made it almost impossible for a solo guy to do business, a free market kind of guy that doesn't want to be a part of a big group. It's created this situation where doctors are more like employees than they are physicians. And, again, I love our big hospital group. I go to the doctors there, all that kind of stuff, but it's not as patient-centered, I don't believe, as it used to be. And it's something that I agree with you. We've got to find the free market solutions to that. The free markets work. The free markets work to create a larger pie, better services at lower cost for everybody. We just haven't had a free market in so long, Tony, that people don't know what it looks like.
And it's probably going to have to be a step-by-step escape from a government-centric healthcare approach, like you said, to a more personalized healthcare approach. And just like everything else we work on, that's where the answer is.
Tony,
it'll be a long struggle, but
I just
we'll
love
get there.
You. Escape. I love that. Tony West, Americans for Prosperity, Georgia. We need to escape from this government control. Thank you so much for being with me today.